That's a very valid question, right? Because that now changed the industry, right? This is changing the industry. But how do we have the protocols and policies around that to protect the artistry as we move forward?
Yeah.
Forgive me, I didn't press record at the
That's
top.
okay.
I wrote a note and I didn't do it. Okay.
But people were freaking out when practical effects were being replaced by CGI. That was a really big deal. And the thing is, it still takes a human to learn CGI and to implement it. And there's still artistry there. And I do think that it still takes a human to tell AI, I want this, make this. No,
Right.
I don't like that. Change that. So there's so much anxiety about all these other things that are going on with residuals and just so many other things. But I think we should focus and not have a huge hysteria sandwich,
No, Lisa, I want the hysteria sandwich. No, I love what you're saying, and someone
That's a good title for like another podcast or
exactly.
Hysteria.
Someone wrote in the chat, Christopher, I wonder what the conversation was when movies started talking. Right. And that's a very valid question, right? Because that now changed the industry, right? This is changing the industry. But how do we have the protocols and policies around that to protect the artistry as we move forward?
Yeah.
Right?
I think what we were saying before about the licensing part, because I've seen on Backstage, listings for someone's image to be scanned for a video game or someone's voice. And I've seen them for as low as $50 and they're perpetuity. And what we need is for hungry actors to not do that.
Yeah.
Because if no one does it, then they won't keep assuming that they're going to get that. That they're going to find that person. It's like the same thing when I see a non-union film that's $125 a day for 12 hours and there's, nudity required and there's no intimacy coordinator. And I'm always like, no, don't do it. But they always find someone that's going to do it.
Yeah, but why is Backstage publishing
whether you're
that?
non-union or SAG, you just like our non-union actors. I know you're trying to build your resume, but like, the perpetuity and the nudity with no intimacy coordinator and just those heavy asks like that, they wouldn't keep asking that, in my opinion, if they didn't keep getting it. You know what I mean?
Right. But actors need to take agency on themselves and say, you can say no. You can make them follow up with you and say, you want me for this? Well, you got to write this out. You got to write this, just because you're non-union doesn't mean you don't have any workers' rights. And also, why is Backstage publishing those? Gary Marsh at Breakdown is not going to publish stuff like that.
Right.
So, everybody in this industry needs to come together and get real clear on workers' rights and what the industry best practices are.
Yeah. And, I don't know if non-union actors, if you don't have an agent or if you do, and you see some opportunities that say perpetuity, I've many times gotten them to agree to a 2-year term.
Great.
And not do because we'll say, we like this, but we don't like that. If you're willing to give me a final term, then we can, maybe close the deal or whatever. So sometimes that's possible.
I think what you're both saying, which is so true, and this especially goes for actors, is this, and I just talked to one yesterday, a dear friend who is wonderful, and she said she had just been offered as she called it, a cash grab for it to do something, and then it essentially was told, yeah, but once you do it, you're just going to get a big old chunk of money, and then nothing beyond. And that's the problem. And I think Lisa's right when she says we have to, as actors, take responsibility for that, because it's hard, especially now, to say pass, because as Laura said, somebody's going to say, no, I'm in. And that's where it's going to get tricky. That's where you have to not think of just the short term, but think about the long-term ramifications.
Oh, completely. And it's kind of what you were saying earlier, Nat, of thinking about the future of the industry of writers, right? And the all the up and coming writers. And this is what I've been saying a lot to my clients as of late is it's not just about the self-tape audition you're going to get this week, right? Or the lack of self-tape auditions you're going to get this week. Like we just have to think about the bigger picture of what you do say yes to, what you do say no to, right? Everyone wants to jump FICOR right now. It's like, well, then that's just going to weaken our union. I mean, there's so much other, union stuff we could talk about as well. But I think it just comes down to how can we also, yes, think about yourself, and I get that we need to take work, and I get we need to put food on the table, and how can you also think about the big vision of the industry and the career that you want to have, because we want to have those residuals. We want to be having this career, having a long career, not just a career that lasts today past 2 self-tapes. So I think it's really important to look at the larger picture of the industry. And a lot of people in the chat are saying, yeah, as actors, we need to say no. So I love what all of you are saying.
And most of those projects that are commercials that are in perpetuity, that are running on Hulu or whatever, and those low budget films that ask for the moon, they're not going to beef up your resume to a point that they're really even advantageous. So like, is it really worth ditching your day job for $100 a day for something that's ultimately not going to give you more clout in the audition room as being a part of that project? Right. If that makes sense.
But on the other hand, so I do a ton of short films that are like a $200 a day thing. And, they can be, really important for actors to consider, if it's a great role, if it's pivoting you from something that you've never played before, if you're going to be the lead and not, the fifth technician on the left or whatever, then those are really worth it. If you're passionate about a script, if it's something that's going to play a lot of festivals, if it's something that's a proof of concept for something bigger. Yeah. So, use your aesthetic and use your taste and go after things that are really worth it.
Yeah. There are a lot of great short films, and we'll send auditions out, and we'll say, look at this production team. This is a great production team. A lot of times there's a casting associate that is doing a short film or an indie film, and that's them moving into a larger role to eventually be the head casting director, and that's there's for sure. I'm not poo-pooing indie work and short films at all, just some of them.
Well, I think
you just have to vet it. You just have to look up. Yeah. I mean, if you go to IMDb or you go wherever and you try to find those names and you can't find anything on those people at all, and we're not talking a student film, because like SCAD here in Atlanta does some fantastic quality student films, and those filmmakers today, student filmmakers today are going to be the filmmakers of tomorrow. So yeah, it's all about some good research and making sure that you're working with a good team.
I love that. Yeah, it comes down to being discerning, each project by project. I always say that I always ask myself 3 questions before I take a project. Will it bring me joy? Will it pay me? And is it in alignment with my big vision for my career? And if I can say yes to 2 of those, then I will do it. Because if it's a great, grad thesis thing of this up and coming director who their work is brilliant and everyone's writing about them, and I love that role, and that could open up things, I would probably consider doing that. Why not? I think it's important to be discerning about this stuff. We have a lot of conversation going on in the chat about the ULB contract and all of that. I agree with you, Lisa. I don't know that they're carving that out as far as I know. So I'm not sure.
I just want to tell just the audience that I am very allergic to people saying, I heard this, somebody heard that. That is like a path to destruction. I have seen more misinformation by somebody repeating. If you're going to say that somebody was cast in a thing with a big director, who's the director? What's the movie? Tell me what it is. Let's look it up. Is it really a ULB? Maybe it really is. There are a lot of people who are, under $1 million, under $3 million, they're doing stuff and they're trying to make it work. Now, can they raise money later if they have a name? Maybe they'll raise money for sales or post-production. Sure. But please be careful repeating rumors. If you're going to call somebody out, call them out. Say who it is.
Thank you for that. And look, if you have any questions about contract stuff, call SAG-AFTRA, everyone. They will answer your questions. But though this person said, that person said exactly what Lisa's saying, that's when we start to, that's when we can spiral down, because we start to believe all these things that might not be true. So I'm not an expert on the contracts. I know enough about what we're doing and what we're dealing with right now. But I think if you have any question about contracts, please reach out to the union. They are there to support you with that. So just know that. Gosh, we've been all over the place talking about stuff. Where we ended up. But I think I want to go into talking a little bit about residuals and all of this, because I think I heard one casting director say, was it, oh my God, I'm blanking on her name, Kendra Castleberry. And she had said she believed the concept of the middle class actor is gone. And I thought that really hit me in a certain way. And I've been really percolating on that and thinking about that, and, think about what that means to me, as an artist and an actor as well. But just curious to your thoughts on that. Do you believe the concept of a middle class actor still exists? How does that play into this time that we're in right now?
I'll answer again. I'm so aware that we have actors here more than anything, but so that's where I will try to come from. And I know that Lisa and Laura know probably so much more than I in that respect, but here's my response to it. When I was an actor, there was a middle class. It was a wonderful middle class because you could make your own deals. You had agents who were able to, whether you got top of show or whatever it wasn't quite as extreme as it is now. I do think, because I definitely see it with writers, but I am seeing it with actors, that some of that middle class is going away because the studios, again, my opinion, it's only one person's opinion, are suddenly saying, well, no, we're not going to do top of show. We're not going to do this now. This is what it's going to be. And you as an actor then have to decide, and I think this was said so earlier, is it a role that's worth me doing? Will it definitely do something for my career in the long run? You got to look at the big picture. So I do think that the middle class if we're not careful, will go away even more so.
I was asked in the chat to define middle class actor. So forgive me. So middle class actor, as the way I'm taking it, is, it used to be that we could book like 4 or 5 guest stars a year and get residuals on that, and you could actually kind of make a living. Do you know what I mean? And now you could book 4 guest stars a year. The residuals on streaming are way lower than what network ever was. And so now it's like we all need to be doing something else to make ends meet. So the concept of like, oh, I'm not A-list, I'm not B-list, but I book, and I can book some things and make a living at this. So I'm feeling like the concept of that middle ground, which is where most of us are, is just starting to disintegrate a little bit because of the lack of residuals on the back end. And that, some guest stars are turned into co-stars, but they're calling them co-stars. And, things that they, I'm using they as an elusive term. Who does that? Who knows? But I think some things that used to be considered one thing are now considered different. Nat was saying like top of show could be gone. So all of those things placed together, I just think makes it harder for us middle class actors to make a living at just acting. So that's my definition of that. Yeah, you're welcome, Dacia.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, like you said, have co-star roles that are quite meaty. They might even be on a weekly schedule.
Right.
And maybe in the past that was a guest star and now it's a co-star. But when someone looks at your resume and it just says,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
co-star,
matter.
They don't know if it was 5 lines, 1 scene, or if it was
IMDb doesn't care. IMDb
3 scenes,
Yeah.
And so I think I think sometimes an actor has to decide for themselves and for their career what they're comfortable doing. If you've already done, some actors are like, well, I've done 5 co-stars, I'm a guest star now, and I don't want to do any more co-stars unless it's The Walking Dead original franchise. I'll do a co-star on that because I haven't been on that show yet. Or some, like when Ozark was here, I don't do co-stars anymore, but I'll do Ozark, because it's going away and it's the last season or whatever. And then there's other actors who have 16, 18 co-stars on their resume, and they're just like, I just want to work. and this is a good show, and I don't see myself maybe being part of this show in another role, which I think is important. You know, like you can be offered a co-star on a show, and then you think, well, I'm perfect for this show for other roles, so I'm going to wait and see if I can book that guest star or whatever, you know. But then there's some shows where you don't really fit in that world necessarily, so this co-star is your chance to be on that show, and you're not really missing out. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But I think for each actor, if you want to try to be a middle-class actor, you might have to be more willing to take the work and not say, well, I'm not going to do more than 8 co-stars ever because now I'm a guest. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I've heard, I mean, I'm just saying things that I've heard from actors that
Sure.
sometimes they sure, they want to be a guest star, they want to be top of show guest star, but like don't close all those other doors.
Sure.
Yeah,
It could
I
be,
mean,
especially if it's a network show. Like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
well, yeah,
we
exactly.
had Will Trent here in Atlanta, and I've just been so privileged in my career as an agent to get a lot of actors their very first co-star booking and their very first network booking. And it's so exciting to get them that first booking on a legit TV show, you know, but especially if it's a network show, because then I know they're going to get better residuals than if I book them on, you know, a Netflix show or whatever. So super excited Will Trent got renewed, since that's filmed here in Atlanta and it's an ABC, you know, network show. And because that helps, like you said, it helps, every bit helps. And that I've watched the YouTube videos that SAG has on how to calculate your streaming residuals, and it varies based on how many people they have signed up for the streamer. So when Netflix lost viewers, when they cracked down on sharing passwords and whatever, that affects everybody's residuals because there are fewer subscribers, because the residuals for all the streamers, that's part of the formula, is how many subscribers does that platform have.
Yeah.
I'd love to speak to the co-star, guest star of
Please.
it all, because it's like part of your daily life when you're on a show. You know, we're given a budget for an episode. Let's say I have $60,000 to cast this episode, right? And the writer writes 20 amazing roles. Well, I can't make those all guest stars. I don't have that unless I'm going to go to the studio and ask for overage. And they're going to like, well, why do you need overage? And who's the name? You know, it's just not going to happen. So that's why sometimes a role that's really great, you will make it a good co-star, and you'll pay over scale for that, or, you know, you'll work it out somehow. And you know what I mean? I say, Chris, you know, is a little bit cheeky. Our wallet cares if it's a co-star or a guest star. Well, my friend, you know, a weekly may pay you more than a one-day guest. I mean, it just depends. And on IMDb, the IMDb doesn't care. And that's a great thing, because you could look like you've got, you know, lots of really great credits on shows, and that's going to help you get your next job. And so, and the other thing, so I want to get back to Kendra's thing about the journeyman actor.
Yeah.
So, you know, the alternative of what Nat was saying, it's like, it's not so much that they're not going to pay top of show anymore. It's that they're going to pay triple top for a big A-list person to play the barista. That's what I worry about when, you know, my producers want to give those roles that would give somebody their first guest star or their first good co-star or whatever, and they want to give it to Reese Witherspoon or whatever, and the money is being spent that way and not being given to writers. And you know, it's like the whole budgeting process seems so wacky to me. Paying so much money for the big stars, and I just kind of shake my head and go, oh man, you know, that's what I think is good, you know, impacts the journeyman actor to me.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Totally.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's some actors think that your time on set is what kind of equates to a guest star, but it's more like the story arc. You know, is that character integral to the plot of the show? You know, and even if you're on set for 4 days, but it's not about you, then it's not a guest star. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Right.
So
And
I
I
think
think
sometimes they're like, well, I was here for 5 days, and I'm like, well, that's great. You got $3,500, or whatever. And I just want to go back to the co-star thing. If you're on a great show with some great stars and you get a nice co-star role, you have like a free masterclass
Yeah.
on set
Yeah.
with those actors, watching them do what they do. And, especially for an actor that's in their first several years of their career, I mean, that's a benefit too. Besides the money, you're
But
getting
also,
to work with some great people.
I'd be
That's
very
exciting.
hesitant to turn down co-star roles until you have that 26,000 for your insurance. Because
Yeah.
I can't tell you at certain periods of time, we get emails from agents begging us, please,
Wow.
client is $1,000 away from making their year. They will do anything. They'll be the barista, they'll be the doorman. They don't care. I mean, like actors
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
you would be shocked,
Yeah.
So before you turn down those co-star roles, make sure you're set,
Yeah.
I think it goes all the way back to what Jodie said, really, truly, which is if two of the three things fill those check those boxes, because it's true, there is money. Can't deny that that's incredibly important, but there's also, as everybody's saying, that what's that role? I absolutely would agree. Do not dismiss anything out of hand just because it says co-star. Look at it carefully and look at what the benefits could be for you besides the money, because I think that ultimately becomes just as important.
Yeah.
And you never, I've booked people I literally booked someone on a one line, one scene co-star, and he ended up being in 3 seasons of a show. And it didn't even say possibly recur. It didn't even say that.
Well, that happened on
and,
one of mine, series regular from a one-day guest, for one day co-star,
It happens.
got into a series regular.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just do it, show up, do your job, make everybody love you.
Nat, could you speak to residuals? Because I know before we started, you were telling us a story about residuals for yourself. But yeah, I just want to, if you could share that.
Yeah, I'll make it really, really brief, I promise. We were talking about when I was an actor, I was lucky enough to do a couple Golden Girls. And weirdly enough, by the way, they were in the same season, 2 different roles. That's a whole other story. I've told some of you who know me. It's weird. But that was forever ago. And those residuals to this day pay, because it was network, pay me more than I make in most of my shows as a writer, which is kind of insane, but it is, and it goes all the way back to what's now, network versus streaming, all those different things now take place. I just think that I don't even understand residuals as a whole anymore. The last show I did, which was the same thing for Netflix, we haven't seen any residuals. It streams, it's out there in the world. I don't get it. I would ask my agents at the time, what should we be expecting? They didn't know. I'm hoping that it's gotten clearer, especially for you actors who are getting those roles on those streaming plays. Because look, there is a ton of content. We all know that.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically how they're even beginning to calculate residuals in streaming. Network is kind of simple. We kind of know that. As a writer, if you write a script and then that script is rerun, you get a residual. As an actor, it should be the same thing. But I will say this, and then I'll shut up. I did, and I didn't even know I did this. I had friends who saw me on, believe it or not, a CNN history of sitcoms that was done about 1.5 years ago. And they said, Nat, you were on. I had done of all things, the second Newhart. And a lot of you were way too young. You don't even know what the and I went, oh my God, they used me. I was the guest star of that episode.
Oh my God.
And I wrote to SAG. I said, hey, can somebody check about both a reuse and a residual? Because I thought, well, this is kind of a wonderful little gift. It was fun to see. But more importantly is, what is that? It took them forever to get back. And again, I don't blame SAG. I think it's I think it's overwhelming right now. They said, well, the company that did that on CNN was not a SAG affiliated company, and therefore you will not see anything for it. And I thought, Well, that's oddly terrible, it seems to me,
Mm.
because there were a lot more actors than just me on those 6 episodes,
Right.
and not one person is seeing anything from that. That just feels wrong to me. And I think that's why actors should be seriously considering what are the long-term ramifications of that and that residual. So anyway, you guys can talk to that maybe more than I can. That was my personal experience.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the residuals are a big thing. I trust our union is negotiating strong right now for that, because
Yeah.
the Netflix residuals are not great. That's for sure. But that goes back to sort of the point that you all were making too of don't cut off the work, right? Do the co-star roles, do the stuff. I'm of the mind to do that. I still take co-star auditions and do that because I want to work, and why not? And I want to meet new casting and meet new people and expand the career. And I think that's
and especially if people were like, well, I'm going to wait and see if something better comes along in this show. And then now look at how many shows have been canceled in the last several months. Like maybe you had a chance and you were waiting, and there's a lot of shows where people thought it would get renewed.
Yep.
And they didn't.
That's happened a lot.
And it's hard because also we're still so close to the shutdown from COVID, and we had people that had projects in the can that were supposed to be originally theatrical releases in the movie theaters, and then they ended up going to the streamer instead and not being in the theaters. And so that changed their pay somewhat, and so we're still kind of on the heels of, okay, we lost money from that situation because of how it was released instead. And now we're just like so close here with another stoppage. So it's just hard.
It must make your job really hard, Laura, because you have to sort of troubleshoot for all of that. When I work with some of the bigger agencies, they definitely are like, if this, then that, if this happens. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to happen. This is, but they're like, we don't care. This, that. I mean, they really go through all of the contingencies of something that could happen. That must be really hard.
It's a lot to balance.
It's different every day, which is
I was just listening to a panel when I was recently at the Palm Springs Shorts Film Festival, because I had a short there, and they did a panel on the strike. And one of the gentlemen on the panel, Jeremy Handelman, he's an entertainment attorney, and he's written a bunch for Variety and Deadline. He's a wealth of knowledge. And he said something that I thought was really it made it more clear to me. And we're talking about like the negotiations and residuals and all of that, where he said the problem is that the AMPTP is there's really 3 different business models now housed under there, right? That we have the networks, so your NBC, CBS, ABC. We have the broadcasting companies, which some of them produce their own content, but it's more like Fox and Sony are broadcasting companies with different business models. And then you have the streamers, which is a totally different business model, but we're trying to negotiate one thing with all of them. And that's I think where the challenge lies too, because they all have very different business models. It's not just networking, 50 years, doing negotiating 50 years ago when we didn't have that other stuff.
And the streamers now also have ad revenue now, right? So it's not just subscription model. Now they even have 2 different business models. So
it's a lot. It's a lot to find your way through, as we're saying. So, and if I just want to say, I know some of you are posting a lot in the chat. If you have some questions for anyone on our panel, please feel free to write. I really appreciate the stories and everything, how you're responding in there. And if you do have any questions, would love to take any questions that you do have. But I do want to ask this. What advice would you give to actors right now who may be feeling anxious or disheartened or scared? I know we used that word at the top. Lisa doesn't want us to be scared. So what could you say to them, Lisa?
I think you need to do exactly what you're doing today, is listening to the beautiful Jodie Bentley and listening to her sage advice. You need to find community, real community, whether it's in a Facebook group or real person community. You've got to keep studying, you got to keep working, you got to keep being creative, you got to just keep doing what you've always been doing, and you will ride this out. But don't give into the hysteria, don't give into rumors, be educated, read, the variety articles, read as much as you can. There's a lot of people who really know what's happening, from expertise. Call out disinformation or make people go deeper. If somebody says something to you, say, well, how do you know that? Where is that coming from? And then that will dissipate a lot of the stress. But, we're not just stressed because of what's happening in our industry. We're coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of people just needing to re-regulate every emotion and their mental health. Mental health is a huge, huge issue. Every class that I teach, I try to give people mental health resources. So it's just all of that stuff, but there is no reason to be afraid. No, we cannot prosper in fear ever.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on that because I so agree with Lisa in so many ways. Here's the deal. Actors from the beginning, there are always the same basic fears. Fear, it starts with the fear of rejection, the fear of this, the fear of what's going to happen next. And the truth is, you have to look beyond it, and you have to look at like I said, a bigger picture. Here's again, my story as a writer will, I think, hopefully make you see why it's incredibly valuable to do exactly what Lisa's saying. I've been through 3 of these strikes now as a writer, and, and the very first one, we were babies, and what we did was we wrote a script during that first strike. We hadn't gotten hired yet. We wrote a spec script. That's how we spent that strike. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I know that there's a catch-22, which is, well, I'm not making enough money. How do I stay in my acting classes? How do I do this? How do I do this workshop? And I don't mean to sound like it. Well, hey, this is the way it is, but you got to find a way for your own mental health and certainly for your own well-being to find, not only to find, what your peers are doing, but get out there and do things and create your during this crazy time. If there's a strike, you got to do that. If there's not a strike, good. Well, you're going to have other things that are going to weigh on you as you move forward. But if you love acting and you embrace that, you have to do something about it. You cannot sit in your home, in your apartment, in your house, wherever you are, and go, well, woe is me. You can't, because that will only make it worse. Get out and live your life and do things that every day in some way that make what you're doing worth doing.
Also, you will always have to have a side hustle. You always will. Even all the series regulars I have ever known have other businesses. They have restaurants, they have t-shirts, they got this, they got that. And you will always need that. And one more time, getting back to Kendra's quote about, is there going to be a, middle-class actor where you only act and that's how you pay your bills? I don't think, Jodie, that's really ever been true. Honest to God. I know a lot of actors who've been, make the rounds on all the shows and everything. You're going to have downtimes, you're going to have up times, but just always have these different income streams to kind of keep you feeling calm. Like and I do too. I mean, I'm a gig person. I got to go out and interview for stuff. And I have several different income streams that help me keep my sanity and keep my,
Yes.
Yeah, I think, it's a good time to get all your acting materials together. If you have new footage and you haven't cut a new reel or made some different versions of your reel, take the time to do that. I don't think you need to run out and get new headshots. I don't think you need to change your age range. I've had some people say, well, maybe I need to say that I'm younger, or maybe, it's not you. You're not why it's slow. You're not why you're not getting auditions right now. So I wouldn't go spend money on new headshots and this, that, and the other. But it's always important, even when it is busy, to have other facets to your life, so that acting isn't just everything and the be all end all. So work on those hobbies, tighten up that second language that you've been, learning, or that you haven't spoken in years, and take the time to read and to write. There's one of my actors has a podcast, and he opened up, it's a scripted podcast that tells stories. And, he opened it up to allowing anyone to submit a story for possible use in the next season of the podcast. So that's fun. Or if I just recently, I would say maybe in the last year, got into scripted podcasts and true crime podcasts. But so if you haven't, like, I'm going to a podcast convention in Denver next month, because I think that area is really growing. And I have seen there's like Queen Latifah has a scripted podcast, and there's like there's SAG podcasts, that have great people involved in them, and like we said, the rate's not super high, but like they're really cool and they're telling really neat stories, and you don't have to memorize it, and you don't have to dress up and put makeup on.
I just go sit in my booth over there and record them.
There's a lot of benefits to being a voice actor too. So yeah, just kind of take care of yourself, and just work on being ready when it does open back up, because it will.
Yes. I envision. I feel like we'll go through August. Who knows? Everything's speculation, right? We all have opinions and speculation. But I feel like whenever it does open up, everything's going to be in pre-prep. Like everything's going to be going. Like there's going to be so much.
That's what I like. I mean, it's like everybody's going to be, when we are open for business, we're all going to be, tearing our hair out, because it's going to be, busy.
Right. And I just want to say, I love so much what you all just said. And I think at the core of that, it comes down to, like, don't play the victim during this time, right? It can be really easy to play the victim, and we're all good at it. I know I can be really good at it too, but I think it's so important to go, but what am I in control of? What can I control right now? How can I fuel my soul and fuel my creativity, as we were talking about, and keep going? And yeah, the money might not be coming where it came from once, which is why I do teach a lot about multiple streams of income. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. I think it's so important. We do need multiple streams of income. So maybe you do now want to create your podcast, write a short film that you've always wanted to produce, start a side hustle that you've always wanted to do. I've had clients like make people food because they love cooking, and other people don't like cooking, and they'll cook a batch of food for the week and sell it to people. And then someone else who hates cooking can heat it up in the microwave. Like there's so many ways to build a lifestyle that can support you in this industry. I think we just got to stay open to that as well. So yeah, Catherine, keep going. Yeah, I love everything that you all have said. Does anyone have any questions here? Let's see, anything going on here?
I'm amazed that people can actually multitask. It's hard to both put things into the chat, listen, respond.
It's a lot.
Although I did have to write down Lisa's podcast, because I thought, that sounds like that's kind of.
Well, let me just tell you real quick. So that's a perfect idea for a side hustle. So on Criminal Minds, I got to be friendly with one of the writer producers who happens to be a real FBI agent, and I was always like asking him questions like, "What about this case? Like, what really was going on in this case?" And he was like, he would get so animated, like talking to me, because I had all these bone ass questions, and he was like explaining to me how things go, and I'm like, this would make a wonderful podcast. And so we just started doing it with a friend of his who's in New Scotland Yard. And for 8 years now, we've been like one of the #1 true crime podcasts. And it's a complete side hustle. It's like so much, I wouldn't say it's fun because we talk about horrifying cases, but
Right.
it's fascinating. And we have, changed a lot of people's lives because we give out information on how to stay safe and how to recognize your, coercively controlling domestic abuser and how to leave them and, all kinds of stuff. But that just came out of just, and thank God for it, because over the pandemic, when all of my shows were canceled and everything, like, thank God I had that. So it's called Marla. I know you. It's called Real Crime Profile.
I love it.
We're on the Wondery network, which is a great network.
Love Wondery.
Yeah. So that would never have happened if you don't just go, hey, what if we do this? You just never know what's going to happen. So
yeah.
I was listening to Somebody Somewhere. They have 3 seasons. I think they're on Wondery as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes you watch it.
Yeah, we were the first.
Sometimes you watch a show like even like Jack Ryan on Amazon, and you're like, man, this is so convoluted. This is crazy. This story, I can't even keep track of like what's happening. And then you listen to something like that's real, and you're like, wow, real life is crazy too. I mean, some of those cases, the twists and turns and the paths and the connections of some of these true cases of people that were involved, and everything that they tried to look into to solve it is just, it seems like fiction, but it's not. It's real. It's wild.
I love it that you guys are now true crime buddies. I love it. I, for one, I do not like the true crime at all. It freaks me out. My husband loves Dateline, and I'm like, I can't, babe. I can't do it. Anyway.
Hey, how about Keith Morrison's got to have he's got a job forever.
Oh, I know.
He's
People fangirl over. I go to conventions called Crime Con, and people are like fangirling over that dude. I mean, he is like a rock star. But
yeah.
Me. Let's see. Can I get Real Crime Profile from Google? Yes, you're answering.
yes, Apple Podcasts everywhere, Spotify everywhere. Yeah.
Great. This is
Anyway.
all right.
Leveling up. There was a question there just real quick,
Oh, was
Jodie,
there?
about leveling up. And I understand that people they think that this is a linear career where you're going to get like a small co-star, then a big co-star, then a guest star.
Yeah.
And it really, honest to goodness, it doesn't happen that way. There can be somebody who's like offer, like I'll try to cast somebody in a great guest star role, and they'll be like, offer only, or we want double top. And then 2 years later, guess what? Knock, knock. We'll audition. What do you got for us? So, this game is not linear. It's blah, 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 blah. So just look for great material, keep working on your craft. And, that's
Right.
kind of the focus.
Yeah, and just know that there's always going to be downtime. There's always going to be slow time. It's just happening to all of us at the same time, right? But that's part of the circuitous way of our business. All right, one final question here before we wrap up. Well, first of all, I want you all to share a show that you're currently watching. Let's get off this true crime topic. What show are you currently watching? And one thing you're doing this time personally for yourselves. I know you're giving a lot of advice to the actors on the call, but is there something you're doing for yourselves for your own career or yourself personally during this time?
We are watching, what's a show that we're watching? Now the name just went out of my head. The Chef Show. The Chef Show in Chicago.
The Bear.
Oh, the Bear.
Yes,
Bear.
we're watching the Bear, and I'm from Chicago. And it's kind of like, I've never worked I worked as a hostess in a restaurant, but I've never worked like in the back of a restaurant, and it's very stressful to watch that show. But I think it's fantastic. So we're watching the Bear. And what else am I doing? I'm just working on some different writing projects. I have over a dozen manuscripts that are in different stages of doneness, from ideas to 150 pages or so. So I'm trying to carve out time weekly to work on that.
I love it. I love it.
I'll talk. I'm watching one show I just finished. Actually, I finished the first season of both. One is Silo. Silo.
That was good.
It is the most claustrophobic show I have ever watched, and dark. And I don't mean dark tonally, although it is dark tonally. Yeah. I can't see what's happening. It's so dark. I actually talked to my friend and went, I can't, what just happened? Who just died? Somebody just died, but I couldn't see it. I laughed, but it's awesome. Okay. Then, just for the joy of watching terrific actors and terrific writing, I loved Shrinking. And I would highly recommend it. They're
Great
both
show.
Shows.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm doing, look, I do besides write and produce and all that stuff, I love to teach. I know a lot of you are here who have been in my workshops, both in Zoom and in person. And I am doing, I'm launching a 15-week workshop that goes directly to what we're all talking about. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I will say this. I'm happy to talk about it with any of you who are, again, you have to be in LA because it's going to be an in-person thing. But I'll happily, if you reach out to me, I will talk more about it for you. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but that's what I love doing. I will always pay it forward. My actors know that that's my joy. So.
Love it. Thank you.
I am such a British whore. I only watch British noir. I just finished Happy Valley. I watch anything with a British accent is all that I will watch. That's my thing. But I'm also working on manifesting so that when the world opens up again, I get another TV show. So Nat, Hit me up, baby.
You are awesome. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to speak because I've known Lisa for a little bit, but I adore her. And Laura, you are absolutely someone that actors should, I'm sorry to say this because you might not want more clients, flock to. Why? Because for reasons that I've with my own agents and agents over the course of the years, you guys are both you're just terrific. And Jodie I've known for so long, and Jodie is freakingly wonderfully talented, and she knows I think that about her.
This is
there
true.
you go.
What a love fest. I love it. This is so great. I mean, when I was thinking about who I wanted to be on this panel, I mean, Nat, you were the first person who popped in my head. And then Lisa, we ran into each other. I was like, it has to be Lisa. And Laura, I'm so glad that we got connected. I just love the way you talk about this industry from such just a heartfelt, honest place. And I think that's really, really important. So thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone for tuning in, giving yourself this gift today, because some of the advice and wisdom from these three lovely humans was, I think, exactly what we all needed to hear right now.